Hey, this is Molly Patrick, and you're listening to the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. We are all about helping people eat more plants and celebrating imperfection as we navigate life's messiness. Hey there, and thank you for listening and or watching this episode of the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. I have a treat for you, and I know that a lot of you out there are going to be familiar with my guest today. So we have a lot of very similar communities, and I know there's a bunch of overlap, and I know a lot of people in our community have found her. So I have Dr. Lisa Moore with us today. So she is a doctor of physical therapy and the founder of Brick House Bones, a global movement helping people with osteoporosis move from fear into strength. I love that. And her mission is to help over 1 million people around the world build the confidence and capability to do the things that they love with the people they love. So Dr. Lisa, welcome to the episode. Thank you for talking with me and for taking the time. I think this is going to be a really helpful conversation. I know I have a lot of questions, and I know that the community will get a ton out of it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Really, it's my pleasure to come here.
All right. So your mission is to help people go from kind of fear around osteoporosis to empowerment and knowledge and kind of being empowered with it. Can we just first let's pretend that we're talking to people and they don't know what osteoporosis is. Can we just start there with a basic definition and what that is and just any information about osteoporosis that you can give us?
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So osteoporosis is a decrease in the density, that's how much bone you have, and the microarchitecture, how that bone is organized, that can happen for a variety of reasons. But that decreased density and decrease in the microarchitecture means that we have a risk factor for a fracture. That is tested with a DEXA scan, DEXA, and that tells us what our bone density is. And then we figure out, where are we at risk for a fracture? How do we proceed?
Okay. And so thank you for that. At what point would one get a DEXA scan? So I'm going to be 46 this year. I've never heard my doctor talk about a DEXA scan. Is there an age where people should start getting these? Do doctors usually talk to people at a certain age about this? Like, what's the deal with these scans?
Love it. Okay. So the standard recommendation in the guidelines is most physicians won't recommend you get one till age 65. Now, when we hear a lot of conversations in women's health circles, we are really recognizing that that's often the kind of late, that we want to have this information as early as possible. And one of the things that we're understanding about bone loss, which is connected to perimenopause and menopause, being a postmenopausal female is one of the highest indicators that you may have osteoporosis. We lose a lot of that bone density in that last year of perimenopause, and the 10 years following. So those last 2 years before we even enter menopause, while we're still having cycles, bone loss is accelerated. So people should get tested sooner. The sooner we can get a baseline.
Hey there, we're going to take a real quick pause, and I'm going to ask you this. Are you tired of doing mental gymnastics when it comes to dinner? And would it totally light you up if you had a constant flow of healthy, delicious, plant-powered meals without the stress of planning or crossing your fingers that it's going to be yummy? That's exactly why we created our Clean Food Dirty Girl Meal Plan Club. Every week, you follow our done-for-you plant-based meal plans, complete with grocery lists and simple batch cooking instructions. No more guesswork, no more wasted food, no more recipe fails, and no more wondering what's for dinner. All you have to do is follow along, and healthy, delicious dinner is at your fingertips all week long. Our members say it's their secret system for saving time, eating healthier, and finally finding their plant-based flow. When you're ready to ditch the mental gymnastics of figuring out dinner, head over to cleanfooddirtygirl.com and click on Meal Plan Club to join the fun. Okay, now back to our awesome episode.
So in your age, I would absolutely have a conversation with my physician about getting a DEXA scan now so that you can take action. The sooner we can take action, the better off we are to be able to prevent bone loss versus trying to recover it after it's already happened. So I think there's absolutely good reason to have these conversations in our early 40s to get this baseline testing.
Okay, well, I'm gonna contact my my doctor and do this ASAP because I am really curious. And so you bring up a really good point. And we talk about this in the whole food plant-based eating community. It's like that focus on, there's a wonderful window of time to prevent a lot of these lifestyle related illnesses. A lot of people don't do that. And so they kind of start this after the fact, and then they're trying to reverse as much as they can or maintain as much as they can. So let's talk a little bit about if there were somebody, okay, so for my age, for example, or a little bit younger, what are things you can do before you reach that point where there's a lot more bone loss that you can do to preserve as much as you can?
Great. Well, hopefully as young adults, when we're in our 20s and we're building our peak bone mass, we're getting enough calcium, protein, and impact exercise. We're getting strength training and exercise and activity. We're doing things that tell bone to grow and be strong. Because once we hit that peak bone mass at about age 30, then we can maintain until perimenopause. So now we're in our 40s somewhere and we're hitting perimenopause. One, if you're having any symptoms, if you've already find out you've had your DEXA, this is a time to have a conversation with a menopause specialist to see, is hormone therapy appropriate? Because it's FDA approved for the prevention of osteoporosis. So this is a tool we have in our tool belt that many of the generation ahead of us did not have. So because of the Women's Health Study, they lost that option when it was interpreted incorrectly. So discussing hormones and support with the qualified individual that can do that would be really beneficial. The other is we need to be looking at, are we getting the nutrition we need? This is one of your specialties. Are we getting the right amount of calcium, 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day? Is our vitamin D level adequate? Because we know vitamin D is what helps us absorb the calcium in our gut. Do we have a good are we getting an adequate amount of protein? Because we know we need both of those things together, the calcium and the protein, because bone is significantly made up of protein. It's that collagen matrix that the calcium and the elements adhere to. So the collagen matrix makes bone strong and flexible, while the minerals make it hard. So we need this combination, and having enough protein is a big, big part of that. On top of that, good nutrition. Like we're minimizing these highly processed foods, these foods that cause inflammation, but we're on top of that making sure we're giving our body the right stimulus of exercise, the right challenge and tug on our bones, which could be strength training. And especially if someone in their 40s that has normal bone density, there's no limitation to what you can do. If you want to lift at a heavier weight or you want to do impact exercise, you're really in a prime opportunity to maintain your bone density doing that. So impact exercise, resistance training, we have multimodal things, weight-bearing exercise, which could be walking and jogging, Zumba, all of these. This multimodal approach is the best way to go.
Okay, so that is very clear. I'm on board, makes sense. What about somebody who is older, who is postmenopausal, who hasn't been focusing on that thing or these lifestyle things, and got the message from their doctor that they have osteoporosis? What would be the first thing to focus on?
First thing, well, one is to know that you can do something. You can do something about this, because what the first response is that clients tell me every single day is you suddenly go from feeling like I'm living my life doing fine to worried about everything you do. Am I going to break if I pick up my grandchild? Am I going to break if I do my normal gardening? Am I going to fracture stepping off a curb, which is what they're told many times. They're told often simple things will do this. But what I want people to know is you can take control and specific steps. We know that there are specific exercises, even for somebody low level, They can work on things to improve their posture, which decreases stress on the vertebral bodies of the spine. They can work on exercises that improve their balance. These are the two of the easiest entry points for exercise for somebody who's at a lower level, and they can reduce their fracture risk very quickly and very simply. There's a principle called the principle of initial values, and this tells us that for people that come into an exercise program at the lowest functional level, that have not been exercising at all, actually have the greatest potential for improvement. And I see this every day. People go from being below average in their objective scores for strength to above average in a period of weeks. It's absolutely transformative. We just have to meet people where they are and start at a pace that's reasonable. Not too fast, not too much, build movement confidence, learn how to move correctly. So that means understanding that if they have osteoporosis and they're older, what are some modifications they should make in how they bend over, how they pick something up. So they're doing it smartly and reducing their risk. That's what the empowerment is, that awareness and knowledge of how not to be afraid of doing it, but just how to do it in a smarter way.
Yeah, that's great. And you have so many resources, and just even your YouTube channel is great for a lot of those. Like, hey, here's, really some basic things to do and in the right way to do them. And I mean, you have a big audience for a reason. You're very informative. It's not like you're very approachable. It's not scary. It seems doable, so I think that is a great resource. And we're going to link to all of your resources in the show notes of this episode as well, so people can get those. So you talked about two things, balance and posture. And those were like two kind of nice entry points that pretty much anybody can work on. So can we talk a little bit, because I've heard this in other places as well, about the importance of posture. And so can we talk about posture a little bit, and about what your, do you have a posture kind of elevator pitch, for lack of a better word, or just some tips for posture in general?
Sure. I want to answer that question, but I want to go back a second to what we talked about. We're talking about the entry point and the resistance training. We know that women over 60, it's 1 in 10 women over 60 actually do the resistance training to meet the guidelines. 1 out of 20 women over 70. So and that's why I have the content on my YouTube channel. It needs to be easy and accessible for people. When just getting people to do it in the first place is so difficult, that's one of my missions of trying to expand the reach, is having free content out there that people can do. Posture, I'm going to tell you. So back 100 years ago, when I was in physical therapy school, boy, they taught us all the ways to analyze posture and look at this and symmetries and asymmetries. And much of that we have discovered in my career isn't necessarily connected to back pain or dysfunction, or we kind of overthought posture to a great degree.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But when it comes to, so I'll kind of add to that just a little bit. So there's really no such thing as a bad posture, but there's postures that we can be in for too long, or do we have the strength of? But specifically to osteoporosis, we do have a very important connection to posture, because that can change how stress is placed on the vertebral bodies. And that is the area in the spine that has the most vulnerability if we have low bone density or very low bone density. So that could be the difference between being hyperkyphotic, so this extra curve in the thoracic spine, to the normal kyphosis. And this can affect our shoulder motion. So if I'm really flexed forward, that's as high as I can raise my arms up. But if I lift my heart, my arms can go all the way up. So that posture is tied into our shoulder health and mobility, but it's also tied into our fracture risk. When somebody has a compression fracture, then they will be pushed more into that hunchback or bent over position. And so exercises that target the spine, that have us extending up, are protective. We know that when we target muscles in the spine for posture, they can be protective. Now, these exercises can be passive, literally laying on your back, flat, support for the head if your head doesn't reach because of that hunch, and reaching up overhead. Super simple, super gentle, but it's allowing this lengthening of the spine while we're laying down. Something that we just don't do very often because we're always sitting. We have a device in front of us. We have a mouse. We're like, I have a computer. We're driving. Everything has us in this kind of forward position.
Yeah.
So to actually lay on our back and have this open position is one of the easiest ways to begin to address that. Mobility is a big part. I have in my level 1 class, I have lots of mobility and posture snacks as I ask people to do a posture snack exercise every day. And it changes. They measure their height. Molly, and I have people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that are gaining a quarter, a half, 3/8, or an inch or more in height just because they're changing their posture.
Wow. Amazing. That's really inspiring. And just, again, it's a reminder that it's never too late to do this stuff.
Agree.
As well. Yeah. Same thing with eating healthy. It's never too late. And I see that as well. You said that the less advanced somebody is, the more chances they have it really advancing and getting better. Right. I see the same thing. It's like when people come to us who have not, eaten healthy and not prioritized nutrition, it's like the changes that happen really quickly. And it's like the changes happen fast when they really prioritize eating really well and taking care of their body. So I think it's really exciting, the potential for people. And I love your message of, instead of being scared, let's be strong. Instead of having fear, let's gain strength. And I think that's a really empowering thing. So let's talk a little bit about balance. We talked about some posture. Can we talk about some balance stuff?
Yeah, well, when it comes to predicting fractures, 80 to 90% of all fractures happen because of a fall. Right. So we really need to address these everyday things that we do and how we can reduce our fall risk. So balance can be simple, static balance. That's like tree pose in yoga where we're standing on one leg. Well, that's not how we typically fall, standing still on one leg. We fall when we're moving, right? We fall when we're walking and we didn't catch that little change in the height of the curb and we catch our toe. Yeah. We fall when we're distracted. We're moving a direction. We turn our head to see something else. So balance training needs to be dynamic. It needs to involve movement. It needs to involve all the systems. So our vestibular system in our inner ear, our kinesthetic system in our joints and muscles and tendons. And it needs to involve our visual system, which means sometimes we balance with our eyes closed or with our gaze changing direction and moving, which is real life practical. Or how about stepping over an obstacle? I can't tell you how many clients I've seen that tripped and fell because they stepped over a baby gate when they were taking care of grandchildren, or like it was a dog baby gate, right? So stepping over things, stepping into the tub, being able to pick our legs up and get over, as older adults, that becomes more difficult if we don't train it.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, all really good things. Okay, so this is a question from Janet, and she has been told that she has osteopenia. Actually, can we hit on that? Osteopenia versus osteoporosis. What is the difference?
Yeah, when they're calculating bone density on the DEXA scan, it happens on a scale with, -1 to +1 would be considered normal bone density. And as the number becomes, if you think of a thermometer, as the number becomes colder, more negative, the lower the bone density. So if you start out at +1, normal bone density, it goes down a notch to 0, still normal, but then you go to -1. -1 is the threshold into osteopenia. That is a precursor to osteoporosis. So osteopenia is between -1 and -2.5. And each one is a standard deviation away from the norm. So -2.5 is the threshold where the diagnosis of osteoporosis comes in.
Okay. Very good. And you can get that information on the DEXA scan. Okay. So this question... Okay, so she has been told that she has osteopenia. I take calcium supplements, vitamin D, exercise with weights 3 times a week, and eat all the good whole food dietary guidelines. Is there anything more I could be doing? Can this condition change for the better? So that's, is there anything more she can be doing? And can her osteopenia kind of get better?
Yes, absolutely. Things can change and improve with the right environment and the right treatment. So we touched a little bit. I mean, I don't know your age, so if you're premenopausal or not far from menopause, worth talking with your doctor about hormone replacement. Look at the risks and benefits to see if it's right for you. The exercise 3 times a week is great. What we know is comprehensive programs when it comes to movement do the best. So we should make sure you're doing full body exercise. Moderate intensity works. It doesn't have to be high intensity, but the amount of effort really matters. So that means when you get finished that set of exercise, if it was really easy, like if you're rating that set on a scale of 0 to 10, 10's a max effort and you're scoring at a 4 or 5, you're probably not getting the effort that's going to create the change that you're looking for. You want to get that effort closer to a 6, maybe even a 7 or an 8 out of 10 with your workout. So if your workout's too easy, that's one simple thing you can adjust.
That's great. And that's when it really helps to have a coach. To kind of keep you honest with that and be like, it's a little too easy. Let's go higher. I know that my coach has definitely done that a few times. Like, we're not going to go with 8s. You're doing 12s today.
Yeah. And it's really variable because she has osteopenia, but what I don't know is, well, has she fractured and what other conditions might be happening? Is there diabetes type 2? And are there other things that are going to impact is the word, are going to make me decide whether or not impact or jumping would be appropriate? There's really multiple factors that I look at in somebody's fracture risk to determine the intensity and type of exercise for them. But one of the easiest things, if she's already doing resistance training, is are you working at an effort that's going to create the change that you're looking for?
Okay.
And then, is she doing balance exercise? That would be my other question. If not, that needs to be a component. And are you doing posture exercise? And if not, that needs to be a component.
Okay. All very good. So somebody says, and we kind of hit on this, but if I have osteoporosis and I haven't exercised in years, where do I start?
So yeah, you have to start at the beginning. Really, you have to start at the beginning and get the basics. And the basics from my training in Bone Fit and other working with older adult programs and my years of research in osteoporosis exercise, we start with the basics. It can make a huge difference. And then I'm also a cancer rehab specialist, so I understand the nuances of having to recover from breast cancer treatment. This is going to be beneficial in all the ways. So I have a level 1 program. It covers the basics. It starts people at a reasonable level. That's the thing that's really, really important to me for beginners is it needs to feel too simple in the beginning. It needs to feel very accomplishable. You need to not be too sore. You need to just allow your body to adjust. Those first 4 weeks, we're getting these neuromuscular adaptations that are what is creating all this incredible change without actual increased muscle mass. We're seeing increased strength because of how this neuromuscular system works. So a slow, progressive, targeted program works. And it can absolutely, I have clients in their late 80s that have gone through that program and seen changes. Again, people are coming in with below normal strength tests and finishing in above normal strength tests in 8 weeks. It's not rocket science. It's just a progressive, deliberate program that moves along in a reasonable manner that doesn't feel overwhelming. So I would ask that you should check into one of those beginner type programs. It would really, really help.
Yeah, I think that would be a perfect place to start. And I love that your stuff is so approachable, manageable, doable, because so many things out there, if it's too hard right from the beginning, it's like people just, they feel defeated and they give up. So I think it's a really smart, good way to approach it. And like you said, they're still getting something out of it, even if they're not sore, or even if it's not like super, super intense, they're still benefiting from it.
Yeah, we can see it. We can measure it. That's why we do objective tests on day 1, and they can check along the way in the program. Yes, because soreness people aren't going to want to go back to a program where they leave sore when they're done and they have 2 days of not feeling good, right? I mean, and then so many of them tell me too, I've tried and tried and tried on my own, but I got hurt and then I couldn't exercise for 3 months. And then I tried again and I got hurt. So that slowest pro is what I say. We just have to build that base. And then from there, it's amazing the transformation that can happen.
Yeah, it's so true. I've heard so many people say that they don't work out anymore because they were injured. Yeah. And, it happens regularly. So, here's okay. So this is, okay, I'm just going to read this. It's a little bit long, but I think it's think it'll be helpful. So, Tammy says that this could not have been better timing. I just had my first DEXA scan last week at 59. I'm feeling scared and frustrated in so many ways. Firstly, my doctor had the nurse call and tell her that she had osteoporosis and to take some calcium and vitamin D. Didn't give me my score, and then took a leave of absence from her practice. So she doesn't have all the information yet. She's working on getting her appointment, but in the meantime, she's lost and don't know where to start. So she went to Google and read that calcium supplements can cause heart problems, and big meds for osteoporosis can do even worse. So the first question is there truth to what I've read about these, the calcium and then the medications for osteoporosis? And then exercise, where do we start? Already covered that. So let's just talk about, I guess, calcium supplements and other like pharmaceutical medications that might be offered to people.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say about calcium is the research really tells us that it's optimal to get it from food. So whenever possible, we want to take a food first approach to getting our nutrients. I think if we can prioritize that, that goes a long, long way. On the studies on calcium supplementation, that was excess calcium that had issues with coronary calcium. So you have to really be over supplementing to cause that problem. Now, if you're shooting for that 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams a day, you check your nutrition. You need to know what you're getting. You need to know what your intake is. So use an app, use Chronometer, use something to track your calcium via your food, and then you only supplement with it. And there's two general types, calcium citrate and calcium carbonate, that are synthetic forms of calcium. I use a different food-based calcium that has some dairy in it, but this carbonate needs stomach acid to be digested, so it can cause so you have to take it with food. It can cause constipation and other issues. Calcium citrate tends to be a little more easily absorbed, and you don't have to take it. It doesn't require the stomach acid to be absorbed well. So I would only supplement what you're missing in your diet from day to day. Here's another thing. You only absorb about 500 milligrams of calcium at a sitting, and then you need to wait several hours, 3 to 4 hours before attempting to do more. So if you have a meal that's full of calcium and you take your calcium supplement, much of that isn't going to get optimized the way you would want it to be. You got to spread it out.
Okay, good information. I feel like you were about to say something else.
Well, the other half of the question was on medications, and really, as a physical therapist, it's not my lane to really talk about the pros and cons of that. And that's really a conversation to have with a skilled provider that takes into the whole context of this person and their fracture risk. I'm sorry they didn't get more information when they got this diagnosis, but I will say there's lots of things you can do but without having that medication conversation to help reduce your fracture risk. I have many clients who are very successful on the medications. I have many clients who don't take them. There are times where I think they're absolutely life-saving and necessary. So I'm not anti-medications. I just look at each individual person in their context of that and support their choice through them working with their specialists.
Awesome. Very sound answers and advice. And I will say, if you are, and I believe that you are, Tammy, on our meal plans or you get our recipes, we do have all the nutrition breakdown, including calcium, on all of our recipes. So you can easily, look to see, what you're getting there. Okay. Other than strength training, lifting heavy, what else can peri/postmenopausal women do to keep bones healthy? I know impact is good too, but other than just jump and land hard, are there more specifics that are best things to incorporate into our routines? Yeah. And so we've talked a little bit about that, like resistance training and weight training, impact training. Can we just dive into that a little bit more and get a little bit more specifics about each?
Here's the thing. Everybody wants the specific. They want to know, like, what's the one exercise for my back and what's the one exercise for my hip. But the overwhelming majority of evidence tells us comprehensive programs make the biggest difference. So that's the thing, is we can drill down. Yeah, impact exercise is great, but we need to work in plyometrics and progressive tissue loading so people can do jumping. Even in your 40s, if you're perimenopausal, you can get an irritation, a plantar fasciitis, a foot pain, different things that happen if you just like leap into jumping activities without appropriate preparation of your tissues. So you want more specifics, but what I'm going to say is moderate intensity resistance training works. High intensity resistance training works too. It's not either or. Both of them can be incorporated. You should be doing resistance training at least 2, if not 3 times a week. It doesn't need to be 5 times a week. Okay? So 2 to 3 times a week of resistance training. If you are working with a coach or you know how to do this, power training should be part of that routine. Power training means you're working exercises that also involve speed. Speed is type 2 muscle fibers. It's our quickness. It's our ability to get our foot out in front of us when we're going to fall. It's our ability to be explosive and run up the stairs versus walk up the stairs. We lose that as we get older. So power should be a component of the exercise training program. And for people who it's appropriate for, impact is great. And there's a variety of impact exercises. We can do 8 to 10 impacts in a exercise session, 3 to 5 sets. So just like we're doing our squats, 3 to 5 sets of 8 to 10 reps of impact. And it can be a variety. It can be box jumping. It could be jumping down off a box, rebound jumps. It could be star jumps or stride jumps. Moving jumps in different directions provide a great alternate stimulus to bone. They like variety versus the same movement pattern over and over. So if you want a tip, I would say mix it up. That's the key. So that's our 3 times a week routine: resistance training, power, impact, balance. And on the other days, do some weight bearing exercise. Go hiking. Go do stuff that you enjoy. And actually, I don't really care if it's not weight bearing. If you enjoy cycling and that's your thing, but you think, oh, I shouldn't do it because it's not weight bearing, go enjoy cycling. You enjoy swimming? Go enjoy swimming. It's this whole combination of all the exercises we do that put it together. But the target, 2 to 3 times a week of resistance training, power, and impact.
Resistance, power, and impact. Okay. With the power moves, if you're like taking what are some exercises that you might find in power moves? I'm thinking something like mountain climbers. Would that be things like squat jumps, or is that more like, can you help me out here?
So jumping can be power. Jumping is a combination of power and impact. It's that explosiveness on the way up. Kettlebell swings are power. A dumbbell clean, where we're quickly swinging the weights up to our shoulders, is power. A dumbbell snatch, we're explosively pushing the weight over our head. Choosing to do your deadlift with a fast concentric phase and a slow eccentric phase. Those are different ways to do power. You can use a step box for explosiveness off the step box, but it's adding speed to your exercise component.
Okay, awesome. Very good. Okay, so this is a good question. So Sally says, I recently read that eating 5 to 6 prunes a day was shown to help with bone density. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I share that in my workshop too. Yeah, I eat 5 to 6 prunes a day as well.
Okay, and dried prunes work, I'm assuming? Yeah. Okay, and okay, so here's a little list of questions. Let me just see if we answered any of these. What age is DEXA recommended? So we talked about that. We talked about the nutrition stuff. Is there a combo? Yep.
Have a conversation with your doctor. It's recommended at age 65. If you had a parent who had osteoporosis, who broke a hip, if you had nutritional issues, whether you chronically dieted, fasted, or had an eating disorder, if you have type 2 diabetes, these are all reasons. If you needed to take steroids for long periods of time, if you've been through cancer treatment, get your DEXA earlier.
Okay, that's great. Yep, I'm going to call my doctor today. I'm motivated to do it. Is there a combo that's recommended for calcium absorption?
I'm not sure I understand the question. We need to have adequate levels of vitamin D for calcium absorption, so that's important. So having your vitamin D level checked is important part of that equation for the absorption. Vitamin K2 is important for that transport from the calcium once it's absorbed in the blood system to make it more interested in creating bone and teeth. So, but that, I think when we have a diverse plant-forward diet, we are getting some of those good nutritional qualities. So, a lot of calciums will come with vitamin D, but I think that needs to be individual. I really think that vitamin D supplementation needs to be individual to the person based on their level and what you're testing.
I'm curious if you could go back and give your 30-year-old self some bone advice and stuff that you know now that you didn't know then. I'm curious what advice you would give.
Sure. I think that's a great question. I think it's easy for me to look back, and I think most of us couldn't see areas where we could have made changes to affect our outcome. One would be what I eat. Without a doubt, eating less processed foods and more whole foods would have been a big thing. Being more aware of making sure I was getting enough calcium and protein. I wasn't. I didn't pay attention to it. It wasn't important. I just ate to feel satisfied, right? And then sleep and recovery. I think when we feel invincible when we're in that age, and we can just go and go and go, and we can be sleep deprived, and we can just work hard. But I think if there's anything I would change and optimize as a younger person, it would be to really think about how important sleep and recovery is.
Good ones. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff when I was younger either, and I think that I don't think most people do, because it's they feel okay. It's, you think that we're invisible, and getting older is just something that happens to other people later. So I think I think that's all really, really good advice. And then I guess I want to ask about your routine, for your workout and just all the things that you do. And I imagine you do a lot of this, you do the stuff that you advise other people to do, I imagine. But what does a typical day look like for you in regards to keeping your body healthy and your bones strong?
Well, there isn't a typical day. It's more like a typical week. And let me just say that when I found out I had osteopenia, I was surprised, and I instantly felt in a second more fragile than I was the minute before I read that result. And I looked and looked and looked for the right guidance and advice. And I didn't find anything that fit a person like me that was young 50s and active. It was all geared towards helping people feel like they were fragile and very simple and easy. These frail older people targeted movements. And I knew that wasn't accurate. And I can tell you, it wasn't in my physical therapy training. This wasn't a standard part of it. I knew enough to tell people to be fearful, not empowered. And so this took a lot of work on my own part to figure out what really mattered and what was the up-to-date research saying. I hired a trainer once I knew that lifting at a certain intensity or effort was going to make a bigger difference for me. I needed to change from doing mostly aerobic exercise, thinking, I want to maintain my weight and do that by doing lots of running and triathlons and that sort of thing. I needed to do targeted strength training. So that's the biggest change I made early, was prioritizing resistance and strength training and hiring a professional, a trainer, to make sure I learned how to lift correctly. So we're talking barbell back squats, front squats, deadlifts, up and down a tall step, box jumps, power moves like a barbell clean or barbell snatch, or with the dumbbells as well. And I learned how to do that. My professional life has me busy 6 to 7 days a week. So I get in, if consistently, 2 days a week of this targeted strength training, sometimes 3. I do full body exercise when I do it. So I'm doing pulling motion, pushing motion, pressing motion, hinge or a squat or a carry, almost every single workout, some form of those things. So, and I work out an intensity of about 8 out of 10 or more. I'm never a 10 out of 10. As an older adult, I never max out a lift. I have no ego. I don't need to do that. I need to stay in the game, right? But 2 to 3 times a week of very targeted resistance training. I do practice what I preach.
Awesome. Yeah, I figured that you did. Yeah, I think that I was never, I never really liked to work out. I really wasn't one of those like people who enjoyed running or did a lot of that, like just, yeah, it just really wasn't for me. But when I found a trainer who I started to work on resistance training and strength training and really got more like honed in and really focused on form, and like I saw the results and I felt how empowering it was, and I can't imagine going back to not doing that. I have really found that for the first time in my life I really enjoy working out, but it's much more intentional than like just going to the gym and going on the treadmill for an
Mhm.
hour. I mean, it's such a different thing. So um that all, yeah, a lot of what you're saying is very validating to hear, and it also makes me very motivated to keep going and to keep doing this. And I think your message of like it's not too late to start and let's get out of fear and move into strength. I mean, I think you have just a lot of very practical, helpful information. And it's interesting that this happened to you. So you were already a physical therapist
Mhm.
before you got this, before you were diagnosed with osteopenia.
Yeah, actually, I was working as a cancer rehab specialist, and many of my clients
Okay.
were breast cancer survivors.
Mm.
And because of the treatment that they go through, sometimes they were at surgical menopause, the chemotherapy, the steroids, and the estrogen suppressors they have to go. They're at increased risk for osteoporosis, increased risk for low bone density and fractures. And so they were coming to me saying, "Lisa, how do I protect my bones given I'm going through this?" And
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know. And so I
Mm.
had to find out. That was part of me finding out. And part of me finding out, I said, I should get my own bone density. I'm sure it'll be fine, but I should get my own bone density. So that was all kind of happening at the same time. So I really spent about 3 years trying to sort through the muddy water because I was astonished, all the conflicting information, all the confusing, you have to do this, don't do this, take that, don't take that. Um, it's very, very confusing. And if people can't sort through fact from fiction, then it's a nightmare. It's really a nightmare to navigate, and then you don't do anything because when you can't figure out what's the right path to take, we just do nothing. And
Exactly.
this is what I see over and over. So what I would want to tell anybody listening that hasn't started, that hasn't taken action, is you don't have to do the perfect thing. You don't have to have the perfect program at the perfect intensity. You just need
Mhm.
to do something to begin to help your body be stronger, and learn just how to do a few of the right moves the right way and protect yourself and build on that. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be huge. Any bit of resistance training you do is better than none.
Awesome. Okay. I think that is wonderful. Really, really, again, just, yeah, I think that a lot of people are going to get so much out of this. And so for you, it just came to mind if somebody is not like brand new to working out, like if they were, for example, where you were at
Mm-hmm.
when you got your scan, do you have resources for people who are a little bit more like, okay, they're already kind of active, they're already making some healthy lifestyle changes, but now they have this diagnosis, well, they found out they have osteopenia. I'm not sure if that's a
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis necessarily, but it's, um, do you have programs and resources for people kind of in that category?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's why I built them. Is I didn't see anything that existed for people like me.
Yeah.
And so on YouTube, they're free. There's a free playlist of more intermediate or moderate intensity videos. But I built an entire program called Build, and that's on my website. And Build is a session of 8 videos that are moderate to advanced level, that give you working on the right things. And the key with Build is it's balanced. So it makes sure that if you're doing a pushing motion, that your other workout is balancing it with a pulling motion. If you're doing squatting, then we're balancing that with deadlifts. It covers all the components that a bone health program should have at the right intensity, including impact exercise. But the other thing is, even though you're working out at that high level, there's no risky moves in there. There's no things that shouldn't be in a bone health program. So, yeah, the build program is what I've done. And then I've got lots of things coming down the pike, Molly, including a great membership program where all kinds of new content for that level and more is coming.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm sure that people will be excited to hear about that, and I will be curious to hear about that as well. So, for anybody who doesn't follow you already, where can they find out more information?
drlisamooredpt.com. drlisamooredpt.com is my
Okay.
website. It's also how you'd find me on YouTube. But all my programs are listed on my website, and then you can get on my email list there where you'll find out more. I didn't anticipate any of this happening. All of this has happened based on what people have appreciated and used and asked for more of. And I know pretty soon we're going to have Brickhouse Bones is going to be the largest collection of osteoporosis and bone health friendly exercise available online in a membership platform. So, and it's going to grow with additional coaches and additional experts, because if people have the resources to do something and feel confident in what they're doing, it changes their life. And if you don't ever fracture, osteoporosis doesn't have to change your life.
Awesome. That's a great message to end on. I think that was perfect way to wrap it up. Lisa, thank you for talking with me today. I really appreciate your time and knowledge and expertise and sharing it with me and the community. Thank you.
Molly, thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Right. Bye-bye. Did you know that Clean Food Dirty Girl has a club? We do. It's called the Clean Food Dirty Girl Meal Plan Club. And if you want to eat more plant-based meals that are delicious, that are damn good, that will have you craving them, if you want to feel energized and healthy from head to toe, if you want to save time in the kitchen each week, if you want to use all of the groceries that you actually buy, and if you want the omnivores in your life to say, yum, to the plant-based meals that you're cooking, you have got to join us. Go to cleanfooddirtygirl.com, and on the homepage, you can find out more. I would love to see you in the club. It is the best. Come find out what all the buzz is about. It is life-changing, and I would love to have you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for being in our sphere. If you can rate and review this podcast wherever you listen